Is I'm ready whenever you are. Just tell me when to go.
Yep.
So I did my presentation on Beowulf and how literary historians could find its roots from its literary and poetic devices. So first I want to go over what Beowulf is about just really fast in its brief history. So Beowulf, its common theme is good versus evil, and it's Beowulf, a Geat. The Geats are the clan. They go to help Hrothgar and his friends defeat a monster that went to Hereward and started killing their innocent citizens. So then Beowulf goes, kills Grendel's mother, and then at the very end sacrifices his own life to save his own people. So now for the history of Beowulf. I feel like to understand what my PowerPoint is going to be about, it's very important to have a good grasp of just the quick history. So the location of Beowulf, the exact location of Beowulf is unknown. Since it is very old, it's difficult to track where it was exactly made, but they have a good guess of where it's at, and that is, they believe it was created somewhere near or around Anglo-Saxon England. So it was translated orally from generation to generation. Because this poem was translated, there's no, I guess, perfect or exact edition of it from when it was first created, especially since it was translated from language, and they never really wrote an exact copy down until 700, from around 700 to 1000 AD. So storytellers, they would change it up almost every time they told it, because Beowulf is a 3,200 line poem, so it'd be very hard to learn word for word. Okay, so, and when Beowulf was formed, if the Anglo-Saxons did create it, they were always at war or in battle with another, usually the Swedes. So it was in a very violent time, and this can show how the book Beowulf, it was about Beowulf killing monsters or enemies. So this could show how exactly, or why Beowulf is influenced, and that's why Beowulf's nature is to kill and be violent. So let's talk about the importance of the literary and poetic devices and how the historians can use them to trace exactly from where Beowulf is. So throughout Beowulf, both literary and poetic devices are used. So like I said, the use of these devices, they can be used to track where Beowulf is from, whether it's discovering when Beowulf was written, as in when in time historically, which is estimated 700 to 1000 AD, where it was created, about what place on Earth that it could have been, and it's estimated Anglo-Saxon England or south of Sweden, and who could have written it. Then more than likely it was someone from Anglo-Saxon, or how it was passed down, as in how it was translated orally from generation to generation. So by using these literary devices, I'm going to explain these four. And for my first literary device is symbolism. So symbolism is the use of a person, place, thing, event, anything to symbolize a person, place, event. Anything can be symbolized. So basically, symbolism is used in Beowulf, and of course for the obvious symbolism, Beowulf symbolizes good, Grendel and Grendel's mother, they symbolize evil. This is what I'm going to focus on in the use of symbolism in my presentation, but of course symbolism is used different in more subtle ways in Beowulf as well, such as Hereward. Hereward is just not a place for Hrothgar and his men to eat and drink, but it symbolizes Hrothgar's achievements, and such as the cave Grendel and Grendel's mother lived in. It is just not a cave where they live in, but it symbolizes them as outcasts of society and how they're not allowed to live in Hereward. So Beowulf's a protagonist. He symbolizes good. Grendel's mother, they of course symbolize evil. So this could have meant, like, with the symbolism in Beowulf, there's also, at the very beginning he talks about the clan he's in, the Geats, were at war with the Swedes. Historically, this did happen. The Geats, who were located south of Sweden, were at war with Swedes, which were the Vikings. So could Beowulf's symbolism, good versus evil, it would show that who wrote Beowulf, was not a Swede, of course, because they would not symbolize the enemy as good. They would symbolize them as evil. So this could be more than likely a Geat or someone close to the Geats who wrote Beowulf. And this also shows where, it could show where and when Beowulf was written as well. So for where, it shows the world is a very isolated place back then. Many people did not know what was 5 miles outside of where they lived or major cities. So they would have to know the people who created Beowulf, the original creator, he would have to been close or well-knowing of the Geats and the Swedes that war constantly. And where and when exactly? Historically, just like when Beowulf is estimated to be created, 700 to 1000 AD, the Vikings, or the Swedes, and the Geats were at constant battle during that time period. And this is why Beowulf is estimated to be located or created from 700 to 1000 AD. Relating back to the history of Beowulf, the Anglo-Saxons were in a lot of conflict. So again, this shows how exactly Beowulf was written, and it could have been inspired by battle. So that is symbolism. Definitions on the board if you didn't get it. Any questions? Okay. Next. So, and here's imagery. And imagery, it doesn't show who, how, but it shows where exactly Beowulf could have been created. And so, imagery is how the author uses a vivid description to describe something to create a better picture in the reader's head. This creates interest, and in Beowulf it's used often. So in Beowulf, three examples of imagery would be the blood-stained mirror, Grendel's dark underwater cave, and the one I'm going to be using is the violent seas. So the seas, unless you lived on the coast, you would not know where the sea is, because like I said, people wouldn't know what's far from their house. So, and they talk about the seas being violent, but typically the seas in that area are not violent, but the Scandinavians, or the Geats, they were considered sea-faring people. So, and not everyone was scared of water at the time, but specifically the Geats, they feared water, and they would travel rarely by boat. So this shows like exactly where it could have been written and who by. So like where, it would have to be someone close or near to the coast, because Beowulf and his, say, clan or his friends travel across to help Hrothgar and his men. And it shows who could have done it, because of course someone living in that general area could have had to create it. On to my, now I use alliteration. Alliteration is not a literary device, but it is a poetic device, as in it's mainly used in poetry. But alliteration is basically the repetition of consonants or close soundings or word groups. There's one I have on the board, up from his swamplands, sliding silently. So this is a use of alliteration because, of course, we have swamplands sliding silently. And alliteration for storytellers, it was really big, and this is why Beowulf could have been transformed, because storytellers, of course, could have their own modifications. So if you're given something like this Sally sells shells down the seashore, it's just, I could not have heard that for possibly 6 or 7 years. Now I still remember this, and this is how storytellers would tell and remember Beowulf, because a 3,100 to 3,200 line poem, there's no way on earth anyone could get that word for word unless it was written down. And first copy wasn't written down until after 100 years of when it was first orally created. So, of course, storytellers, they could have said, up from his swampland, sliding quietly, but that's not as memorable. So this is why they use alliteration, so they could remember it and tell it almost exactly. So this typically tells this will generally tell historians or literary historians how exactly Beowulf was changed, and how, since it hasn't been written down until 100 years after it was originally created orally, So this shows like how it could have been changed from generation to generation and, of course, language to language. So basically, storytellers would create their own modifications, changing the whole story of Beowulf. Not the story, but the words. So I'm coming to my conclusion on how historians were able to find Beowulf's roots from these literary and poetic devices. So before I come to my conclusion, are there any questions? Okay. So symbolism shows who and where. So symbolism, it of course symbolizes something. So it symbolizes Beowulf is good, meaning the creator of Beowulf would have to be a Geat or Scandinavian or close to the clan of the Geats. Shows where, because symbolism and where, because it symbolizes exactly who would have written it, since the world is a small place for them, so they would have to, of course, be close to them in location. There is imagery showing where, and imagery, of course, is using better image, more descriptive image of something, and able to create a better picture, and it describes the violent seas. So, of course, this shows where, because they're crossing the ocean to get to Sweden. And of course, alliteration on how it was translated. Storytellers using their own modifications and their own mental tools to help them remember lines of Beowulf. Thank you for listening. Any questions? No?
Great.